first we're going to need two downloads that are both free that we need to install. So first, python.org/downloads, and you're going to download the latest Python release and install that. When you run the installer, default settings are probably fine. And the second piece of software that we need to install is Visual Studio Code. This one is also free, and you can find a download for Windows, Linux, or Mac. And then we'll be ready to get started after you have those two things installed. Now let's find Visual Studio Code. Search VS Code in my menu. And when you pull it up, you're going to find something like this. Now let's go ahead and let's actually create a new folder. So I'll call this gamer tag generator. Click OK. And that's going to be my project folder. So now in Visual Studio Code, I'm going to click Open Folder, or if you don't see this, click File, then click Open Folder. And let's see, I'm going to choose Gamer Tag Generator as my folder. Okay, I'll close this Copilot window, and this is our folder open in the Explorer menu here. So we have some different menu items. Explorer is going to show us our folder and file view. And I'm going to click this new file icon, and then I'll just make a file. I'll name it gamer tag. Let's name it generate gamertag.py. And when I hit enter, it creates that file, and it's going to automatically detect that the language is Python, and probably a prompt will show up and it'll say, do you want to install the Python language extension from Microsoft? If it doesn't show up like on mine, you can press Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P if you're on a Mac on your keyboard. And then you're going to start typing the word extensions and choose the option that says install extensions. Then if we do a search for Python, we're going to see all kinds of different extensions, but we just are interested in installing this first one. So this is going to, this is like grammar support for Python. So it should help us identify when we have a problem and autocomplete and give us suggestions to even complete the line of code we're typing. So now we're ready to get started with the code. So what I'm going for is I want to run this program, and initially I just want to have it give me one recommendation for a gamer tag. And I'm going to generate my gamer tags like this. They're going to be adjective, noun. So I'm going to create two lists. One I'm going to call adjectives. But remember the syntax here. We have variable name, equals sign, and then our assignment. So this is where we put the values. And a list means that we can have multiple values inside of the square braces. So I'll just leave that empty for now. And I'm going to make another list called nouns. And now I'm going to start adding adjectives in here. So let's think of some. I could do auspicious, ferocious. I could do insidious. Let's do spicy, vivid, noble, ghostly. And we could keep going, but that's a good starting point. And now let's come up with a few nouns. So we gotta have buccaneer. I think that's how you spell it. We're going with it. I'm gonna do penguin. I like penguins. I'll do some kind of cooler atmospheric nouns, mist, haze. We could do echo. Let's throw in some more animals on it. Koala. I don't know, I'm gonna get silly. Microwave. Potato. Chatbot. Doesn't matter. And you can make as many as you want. And you could get really fancy and you could create different categories of nouns or adjectives and make a really fancy, robust gamer tag generator. Let's just work off of these two. And now what I'm going to try to do is combine any two of these to get a gamer tag. So how can we access items that are in a list? Well, if I just type print adjectives, I can see the list. And by the way, you're going to need to press Control or Command S on your keyboard to save your file before we run it. So when you see that dot up there, that means that you have unsaved changes. So we can go to File, Save, or I just press Control S. Now we're ready to save. And once I have the Python extension installed, I have a Run button up here. And that means that all I have to do to run this Python code is just click that button. Let's check it out. And we can close this little ports sidebar thing here. And this output, this is a little program I have in my terminal. It gives me quotes and fortunes, and so ignore that. But this is the program's output right here. So this is my list. I just printed it out. But how do I access items in the list? Well, remember that every item has its own index or address, and they start at index 0. So if I want to access adjective, let's call it first adjective. I say first adjective equals adjectives 0. That's its address. And I just hit the up arrow and enter to run it again. You can also just click the run button again. And nothing printed. Why? I didn't print it. So let's do that. At, let's say first adjective at index 0, comma, first adjective. And then we should see that print out. Auspicious, right? And then the last adjective, I could count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'd be tempted to type 7. But wait a second. If we started counting at 0, we're going to get an off by 1 error. I'm going to change this name. There we go. We're going to get off by 1 error. See, list index out of range because we start counting at 0. So this is 7 minus 1, 6. And this is fine unless we start adding more adjectives, and then I have to change that. So another way, an easier way, if I wanted to get the last one, is to do this. So let me name my variable last adjective so we know this purpose. I could do len adjectives. So what does len do? The len function takes an object, in this case, one of these lists, the adjectives list, as its input inside the parentheses. So remember, a function is that code that you see that has the parentheses. And sometimes we don't actually put anything in them, but usually we put some kind of input in them. In this case, len adjectives is the input, and this output that it's going to give me is a int, a whole number. That's what this code documentation, when I hover my mouse, is trying to tell me. This little arrow symbol returns int. That means it's going to return the number of items in this container or in this list. So if I print this, And let's comment this code out for a moment. I get 7, okay? So see, that's just storing the number, that's outputting, giving me back the number 7, and then I'm printing that output. If I want to store that output to a variable, I have to capture it like this. I have to say, or basically save it. Num adjectives equals len adjectives. Just like that. And then what I can do to get the last adjective is that I can say last equals len adjectives minus 1. Or since I've already stored that in its own variable, I can just say num adjectives minus 1. And now let's take a look. Ghostly, which is the last one. Good deal. So now I have an adjective, and you can imagine I can get a noun in the same way. So let's just make this more concise to save time. Like this. And I'm going to write num nouns equals len nouns. And then I'm going to copy this. Oops. Let me try that again. Control C, Control V. And then we type last noun. Nouns. And then this is going to be num nouns. Okay. Now let's see what we get. Ghostly chatbot looks good. So now all I need to do is combine these two, and I have a username. So how do I combine things? Let's use a variable. Actually, let me show you with a print statement first. So I can do this. I can say print, and I can take these guys and print them just like that. And this is going to work. But I think it would be more elegant to store these to variables. So store it to a variable, I can do this. I'll say ADJ for adjective, because I'm going to delete these. This is just to walk you through the logic first. And I'll say noun equals nouns, all that. And now all we have to do in our print statement is we can say adjective, noun. And that's going to combine the two. Okay, so there we go. Ghostly chatbot. And now I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these print statements. And I can do some special things to strings. Strings have their own built-in functions that we can call by typing dot, and then we can actually get a list, and this is why we install a Python extension, so we get some help. And the first recommendation is actually the one I'm going to use, and that's dot capitalize. And it didn't complete the parentheses for me. So that's one of the string's built-in functions. And can you guess what it does? I'm going to say it probably capitalizes the first letter. I wonder if it tells us. Return a capitalized version of the string. Okay. And now look at this. The G has been capitalized. Now we can do the same with our noun. And make sure you add those trailing parentheses. Even though we're not putting any input into the parentheses, it's just the rules of the Python language that a function has those parentheses. And a function, remember, is just an action or a command. So it's going to do something. It's going to give us some output. So now we have Ghostly Chatbot. That's looking better. And now we could use a different separator. So when I do comma, it adds its own space in between the two. If I use the plus symbol, in this context, instead of it being the addition operator, we call it the concatenation operator because it combines strings. And so if I add these together, I can get rid of that space, run it like that, if that's how we want our usernames. or maybe we want an underscore in between. We can do it like this. Okay, good. So I like that. And then the way I'm going to be writing this from now on, though, is I'm going to be using the formatted strings, or the F strings. And I'm actually, instead of just doing it like this, I'm going to change this to gamer tag equals, and then get rid of this parenthesis here. And then the F string syntax, remember, this is where we write a string like this. We say F, and we open quotes, and then we can write our string, but we create these curly braces as placeholders for our variables. So I can put variable here, variable there, and then I can put underscore in between. There's really no reason why, you don't have to write it this way. You can use the way that we just had it written. I like using the F strings, so that's why I'm going to do it. So all that does is give us one fixed gamer tag, though. So this is a good start. Now what I want, and now notice we're no longer printing it out. Print gamer tag. What I want is to be able to get random recommendations by randomly combining any two of these. So instead of just the last and the last, this could be 0 and this could be 1, or this could be 0 and this could be 5. This could be 2 and this could be 9. So I want to randomize them. So how am I going to do that? Well, Python lets us import outside code. So there's all these other bodies of code out there. We call them libraries. They're big collections of code that are already written. Some of them are built into the Python language, so when you installed Python, they exist. But Python doesn't want to clutter up the memory with things you're not going to use, so you just have to import them. Other ones come from this place called the Python package index, where anybody, including you or me, could write our own packages to do different things. So we're going to import one called random, and this random package, we don't actually have to install it from the Python package index because it's already part of the Python library. It's just that they don't include it, they don't import it by default for us, because we can write a lot of programs where we don't need it. So we're only going to import it when we need it. So what does random give us? Well, this is a random number generation library. So it gives us access to all of these functions for helping us generate random numbers. And so how do I use it? Well, I type the name of the what's called a module, which is like a file just like the one I'm writing right now. And it has access to all of these different functions that are part of the library of random code. And so I type random dot, and then I'm going to look for a function called randint. What is randint? This stands for random integer. And if I hover over this, I get an idea of what it's doing. So variable, let's see, def randint a, b. What does this mean? It means that this takes two inputs, and both of the inputs that we put in the parentheses are going to be integers. And the first integer is actually going to be the start of a number range, and the second integer is going to be where that number range ends. And it says it's going to return us a random integer. That's what this arrow means. And then the int, that means it's returning a random integer. What does returning mean? Well, it means it's going to give us that output so we can store it somewhere if we need to do that. That's all it means. It's giving us output. So it says return random integer in range A, B. That means that if I say 0, 1, it's going to return either a 0 or a 1. And I don't know which one it's going to return until I run it, or let's say output. So let's say result equals, and then let's say print result. Now I got a 1 the first time, I got a 0 when I ran it again. And if I kept running this 1,000 times, if this were a relatively kind of good random number generation, it should be like flipping a coin. I should get 0 about 50% of the time and 1 the other 50%, right? And so what I'm trying to do here, how does this help me get a random item from the list? Well, we index our lists, right? We get our lists by addressing them by their number, their position in the list. So if I can just generate a random position within the range of index 0, the first item, and index 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the last item. Do we have 7? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 6. Then I can randomly generate the index to one of these, and then I can plug that in to this syntax. So it looks like this: 0, comma, num adjectives. So I'm going to call this adjective index equals out, and I'm going to write a comment beside it to explain it. Outputs a number between 0 and num adjectives inclusive. I'll come back to that inclusive. Now let's print it out and run it several times. Print adjective index is, and then this is why it's good to have a nice code editor. When I see the variable that I'm trying to type, I can hit the down arrow to select it, and then I can hit enter, and then I don't have to finish typing. Okay, now let's run this a few times, and actually let's run this like 20 times. How can I do that? For I in range 0, 20. And I'm going to show you what this does. Uh-oh, I think I did something wrong here. I need this line to go inside my loop too. Otherwise, we're going to generate one random number and keep printing it over and over again. So I need to generate a random number every time this loop starts over again. So it's going to run 20 times. Let's try this out. And so look at all the different random numbers I get. And you could imagine that if we start indexing these, it's going to print all of these different items. But wait a second, we have 7 items. The first index is 0. The last one is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not 7. But look, what we're generating is 7. So the reason I did this is to show you that if we try to run this right now, we're going to have a problem. So let's print this out. Adjective, adjectives. That's calling on my list. And then I'm going to try to print out the adjective at this index in the list. Okay. So look at this. It worked several times, but then when the index value became 7, it said list index out of range, right? Same error that I showed you earlier. So we have a problem, and the problem is this: randint, hover over it, it says including both endpoints. And this is, in this case, the braces, this is not Python syntax, but a mathematical notation that means include the start value and the end value in the series. Whereas if it were written, when you see it in math, if it were like this, 0, 9, parenthesis, that would mean exclude the 9. And this would be exclude the 0. So everything between 0 and 9, but not including them. This thing includes the 0 and the 9. So they're both possibilities. Or 0 and 7 in this case is our upper bound. That's what this could equal. So all that means is all we have to do is subtract 1, right? Num adjectives minus 1. Then we never go out of bounds. Let's press Control S. We never go out of bounds, but we still can get all of the adjectives. We're not ever, there's not one that never gets selected. So now we can run this 20 times and never hit an error. Great. So we solved our problem. And actually, look at this. The range function, this is creating, basically it's like it's creating a list on the fly of 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 20. And then for I in range, it's going to run the loop for every number in that temporary list it's making. And because this runs exactly 20 times, and I can prove this by enumerating it. Look at that. So 1 all the way to 20. Because that runs exactly 20 times, that tells me that the start value 0 is inclusive, and that's an exclusive endpoint. So same thing going on here, but this range function works differently than the randint function. So there's a little extra insight for you there. All right, so let's get this thing finished up here. So I have my adjective index. Let's extract this out. We don't need to print it anymore. Let's store it to a variable like this. Adjective equals that. And let's go ahead and capitalize it. End with our parentheses. And now let's copy and paste this. And we can do the same thing for our noun. I'm going to clean up my code so it's easier to maintain. So let's write some comments. Get the number of adjectives and nouns to variables store. That should say store the number of adjectives and nouns to variables. Okay. And why I have it like this is so we can add as many more as we want, and we're not going to have to change any of this code, right? And then this was just our test, so we can get rid of that. And now we're going to change this. So this is going to be noun index. We're going to change this to num nouns then. And then I'm going to name this variable. So double click on that. I'm going to name it noun. Double click on this, and we'll name it noun index. Okay, so now we have adjective and noun. Now the only thing we have to do is combine these two, and let me name that the right variable name, adjective underscore noun, and then we just have to lastly print it. So then I can print something like your recommended gamer tag, colon, braces, and when I close this quote, then it will be good to go. So now I should be good to run this, right? Let's see what we get. List index out of range. What? Ghostly ferocious. Adjective, adjective. Do you see what we've done? I copied and pasted and forgot to update my list to match the index. And so that out of range is because we actually have more nouns than adjectives. And I was saying noun equals adjectives, meaning get something from this list, that's the wrong list, using the noun index. So if the noun index is 8, if it's 7 or 8, something greater than how many indexes we can use in this list, that's why that error is happening. And that's why when it is in range, we see 2 adjectives, because we were moving too fast. So now it says nouns, noun index. Now we're never going to go out of range, and now we should see adjective noun. Sure enough, look at that ghostly buccaneer. That's a cool username. Spicy microwave. That's an interesting one. So you've just created your first pretty powerful Python program. You've made use of 2 lists. You've made use of indexing, custom string manipulation. We've capitalized our strings, and random generation. So you've done a lot in just this one program. If you want to stick with us, we're going to do some more advanced output with this in part 2.